Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cedarville Stories Podcast. I'm Mark Weinstein, and today on the program, I'm talking with Josh Hochstedler, a student at Cedarville University who is studying cyber operations and is already a co-founder of an AI company. Josh grew up in Brazil, and today he'll share with us how the Lord has transformed him while at Cedarville and carried him during some serious personal crises. So sit back and enjoy this week's Cedarville Story Podcast with my guest, Josh Hochstedler. Josh, thanks for joining me this week on the Cedarville Stories Podcast. It's great to have you in the studio on this nice spring morning. But to get the podcast going, to help people understand who I am talking with, I know a little bit about your story, but when you think about your life right now and the season of life you're in, you're a rising junior at Cedarville University. How would you describe what God is doing and how he is working in your life right now?
It's a great question. I think that the number one thing that he's been working in and teaching me about is this idea of belief. I think that oftentimes it's easy to lose sight of faith and of the power of just truly believing in him, in his providing, and that he will do what he says he will do, right? So even like in my case, where I've come through so many different things that have taught me about that, right? I still can lose sight of that sometimes. And he's just been reminding me of, hey, if you trust in me and if you follow and step into the things that I'm putting before you, I will open the doors and take things further. So there's been a strong trend of that just in work, in business, and in my personal life recently.
So can you share an example of where that faith, that belief has become more evident, what he has used to help you in that regard?
Sure. I'd say one recent example was a missions trip that we took to Chile. Okay. It was a part of EFC, Entrepreneurs for Christ, but the way that it happened was I joined Entrepreneurs for Christ. And for those of you who don't know, it's like a Christian network.
It's nationally, right? Or internationally?
Yeah, we're taking it nationally. It's a network of Christian entrepreneurs and business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners. And I joined the leadership team for that. And then I was out at Taylor University to look at considering launching a chapter out there. Yeah. And then I made this connection with this entrepreneur couple, Nick and Molly. And then through that, they let us know that they had a business mission trip that was going down to Chile. And it was this kind of thing that I would have never imagined something like that coming together. And as we'll probably talk about a little later, this was always a dream of mine, was entrepreneurship as missions, business as missions. Right. But I didn't see it coming so soon. But through this little interaction that happened, me going out to Taylor and happening to make this connection, they invited us on this trip, and then me and the rest of the leadership team were able to go and have a truly impactful and kind of big vision trip that really, I think, got all of us motivated to get out there and to continue chasing after this vision and this dream. So,
do you know the way Entrepreneurs for Christ started? Is that something that started here at Cedarville and has grown, or is that a national ministry that we just adopted?
So that's something that was birthed right here at Cedarville. Okay. So it started as Q, Cedarville University Entrepreneurship. And then after about 2 years, the people in the leadership at the time, I believe this was about a year ago, decided to rebrand and go to EFC because they saw the impact that Q was having here on campus. And they said, well, why can't we take this nationally? Why can't we take this to other universities? So that's kind of the progression where it was born out.
Who are some of those leaders that took Q to where it is now, EFC?
The two big drivers were Will Woods and Ben Ormsby. But I think originally it was a girl by the name of Mariah that had made that initial transition. And then Ben and Will came along and really took it all the way. And made that transition.
So now there's a chapter at Taylor University. Is that true?
We're looking at continuing to foster relationships. We haven't started anything there yet, but we're moving things along at Liberty, actually. And so we have one starting at Liberty.
You have one. So you have one other chapter besides Cedarville. Okay, good. And so The future is bright for Entrepreneurs for Christ, especially with Will Woods at the lead. He's a go-getter. So here at Cedarville, you are studying cyber operations as a rising junior. You're a co-founder of an AI company. What drew you in the space of, let's start with cyber operations and then the AI company?
Yeah. So cyber operations, like I said, I kind of always had this interest in business, right? And in entrepreneurship and in how that could be used for the kingdom. But when I looked at kind of the possible college paths, I saw that I could learn those things easier on my own than I could learn like a technical skill. And I really enjoyed computers. I really enjoyed the kind of technical sides of those things. And so I decided, well, let me learn a hard skill and then I can kind of do business, do entrepreneurship along the way.
Okay.
And I can learn by doing kind of thing. So that's what got me into that. What landed me here at Cedarville is the program is genuinely one of the best in the nation. We're one of 21 schools now that are accredited by the government as a center of excellence for cyber.
Correct.
And so I was drawn by that. I was drawn by the fact that my parents had come here too. And so I had that history. And that's kind of what landed me in cyber operations.
Okay.
And then this side of like the AI, I actually had a mentor down in Brazil that got involved with a company called Proto. And I think you may have seen some of the stuff they're doing, but they're basically a AI native Christian education platform. Okay. And it's one of the senior design projects here for the computer science department. So I reached out to my mentor because my mentor was involved with the company that was partnering with Cedarville to do this project. Okay. And I said, hey, can I just like sit in on a couple of the sessions, just follow along the development process? And he connected me with Professor Stephanie Long here from the computer science cyber department. And she actually reached out to me and said, hey, what's your interest? What's your background? I shared a little bit. And then she said, do you want to be a part of the team?
Wow.
And so through that, which was genuinely something very unexpected, like I was a sophomore, I was not expecting to be able to get involved in something like that. But through those opportunities that Cedarville opens up, I had this interest that was piqued in AI, and I made a couple different connections through that project. Their co-founder, David Cook, was co-founder of iTunes and worked on Netflix and YouTube and stuff. And so I got to know him, and that drove a interest in, well, there's a lot of business opportunity and there's a lot of momentum in AI. So why can't we come in and do something with excellence, do something that's a Christ-centered business, and then take advantage of that opportunity and that momentum there. And so I started looking into that. And then through that at the house, my co-founder, Aaron Perry, was also looking at something similar. And we kind of ended up joining forces.
So what's the purpose of the AI company that you and Aaron have co-founded?
Great question. Rupert Labs, we're still finding exactly what our niche is. Okay. And we're still finding where we can best use both of our abilities and skills. But the core idea we have is consulting and connecting. So right now, AI is a space where there's a lot of information coming out. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of changes. And people need others to come alongside them and to kind of say, hey, slow down. I know there's a lot, but this is what's relevant for you. This right here in your day-to-day is going to save you time or save you money. And so the idea is to do that. The idea is that we operate off of a monthly cost where instead of having an expensive 5-figure build up front, we will come alongside and we'll have regular meetings with the client and we'll be like, okay, this is where your business is at. We'll do an audit of like business processes. And then we'll say, this is where you can implement and leverage AI to save time, save money, or save focus.
So you're in the business of time management using AI, correct? So who are some of the clients, or who are you serving in this company?
Currently, we're working with a B2B marketing company that does marketing specifically for kind of manufactured goods and a lot of different industry producers. And with them, we're basically seeing how much we can automate their internal processes.
Okay.
So proposal creation and any sort of discovery, any sort of like lead acquiring and things like that. And then beyond that, we've worked with Proto a little bit further. We've worked with a track athlete, Greg Nixon, who he has a company called Athlete IQ, and he's looking to implement like a digital twin of himself.
Sure.
So like I said, right now we're kind of taking what comes through our connections, and we're still looking for where to niche down.
Yeah. So when I think of AI and what you're doing, AI is very tech driven. So how do you and Aaron and your company stay people first driven? Because without people, what's the purpose of any business, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's something that I was asking myself on this trip down to Chile that we had recently. Okay. Because I realized that I had gotten to a point where I was so head down in the weeds kind of operator mode that I had lost sight of that a little bit. And so it was great to be with Nick and Molly, this couple from Taylor that I mentioned, and some of the other older guys on the team, and see the way that even though, they are business focused, they're very much like operators and get it done, they also are aware of like people's needs and of like prayer, right? There was this youth pastor that was going, and it was going to be his first time leading youth group. And they said, hey, can we take a moment and can we just pray for you real quick? And so it's the little things like that that I want to implement in my own life. And so and I think it's also even kind of intrinsic to the business model. It allows us, since we're not selling a product, we're selling a partnership, a service walking alongside. Right. It allows us to have that more relational side of things. Right. And then obviously there's a lot of things to wrestle with AI itself, right? And where do you implement it? Where do you not? And that's something I've been working through in my personal life, right? Personally, for me, I don't like using AI for anything related to spiritual life, anything related to like personal communications. I like to keep it out of that.
Why? Why is that the case?
Because that, as soon as you start to outsource that, you're outsourcing your relationships. And you have to have relationships. You have to have that connection. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll lose sight of things. You lose the humanity. Yeah.
That's a good observation. So let's go back a little bit. You mentioned earlier in the podcast that you're from Brazil, born in the United States, but lived in Brazil. What was the experience like for you to live in Brazil with your family?
It was, I didn't realize it at the time, obviously, right? Because growing up, your world is kind of what you know. And I think to a certain extent, you have a perception that everybody has that same experience.
Sure, right.
But it was pretty different, So I think that it was an intersection between like America and Brazil, right? Because my dad was American Canadian, grew up speaking English with him. My mom was Brazilian, grew up speaking Portuguese with her. Okay. And it was this kind of intersection between those things that led to a thing that was unique in and of itself, right? An experience. So I was homeschooled, and so I would spend most of the day at home, doing school. And then my parents were big on, get out, do extracurricular activities. So I did everything from soccer to basketball to volleyball, taekwondo, to make sure that we got our socialization in, right? And so through that, then I would speak Portuguese kind of outside of the house, right? When I was at those activities, and English in the house. And so that led to me having a good level of fluency in both languages that was really useful right when I came back here to study in the States and stuff. So.
At what age did you move from America to Brazil, and where did you live in the United States?
I moved from America to Brazil when I was 2. I turned 2 on the plane because I flew for free under 2 years old. So my parents pushed that out to the
We're moving
limit.
now.
Yep. And then moving back here, I moved back when I was 18 for college. Yeah.
And where did you live in the United States? Obviously you probably don't remember that because you were so young. Is that true?
Well, I actually lived in London, Ohio, and we still have the blue house that we lived in. And so I have some memory of kind of like what that looked like.
So you're a Buckeye by birth.
So I'm a Buckeye by birth.
How about that?
Yep.
So what brought your parents to decide that they're going to move to Brazil? Obviously your mom's from Brazil, but was that the reason, or what other factors weighed in their decision?
So obviously that was part of the reason, right? But my dad he came to Cedarville and he studied social work here.
Okay.
Right? And so he had a heart for children and children's situations of risk and that had gone through traumas and stuff like that. And so he made a connection through another Cedarville friend of his, actually, that are still good, dear family friends. He made a connection with a ministry down there called ABBA. And so he went down for the first time while he was dating my mom. He went down without my mom and didn't speak a lick of Portuguese or anything.
Good luck.
And so he was just kind of thrown into the fire, but he loved it. He found a passion for it, and he's still there today.
Okay. So as a child, you witnessed your parents serving others very well. Anything strike you as how they cared for others that has stuck with you to this point?
I think in my dad, it was this idea of service and like loyalty. Like if someone needs help, if someone needs something fixed, if they need a washer or dryer moved, or if they need help moving in, he would be there and he would show up. And with my mom, it was this idea of care and intentionality. And so she was really good at writing and leaving little notes for people and kind of words. And she was also a really good leader too, and organizing, and she cared for people through leadership.
Was she your primary teacher?
She was, yeah.
How did she teach you? How did she guide you in ways that have shaped you to you being a rising junior at Cedarville University that you're going to take the rest of your life forward?
The biggest thing was the love of learning, right? So she encouraged us, and I think that she was able to do this through the homeschooling curriculum that she set up. She was very wise in that way. She encouraged us to understand things, to not just like regurgitate knowledge for tests, right?
Yeah.
But to really be curious about why does it work the way it works. She also had a love for the natural world, and she would, I remember I was never like the biggest fan of it at the time, as you can imagine. A teenage boy might not be.
They wouldn't be, no.
But she would, say, hey, let's go on a nature walk. Let's do a nature journal. Let's, sketch a bird or sketch trees and stuff like that. And so even though I didn't appreciate it at the time, all of that was forming and shaping me to be someone who observed the world around me and who was curious about the world around me. So that's the biggest thing. And then that coupled with a love of reading, we did the Sunlight curriculum, which involves a lot of reading. And so she just emphasized that a lot. And through that opens up a whole new world of knowledge.
Okay. Well, let's stay in your family situation and pivot a little bit to harder times, harder days that you've had to experience and walk through. So you lost your brother Caleb. He passed away. And then after that, your mom passes away shortly after receiving a degree from Cedarville University in nursing. Walk us through those painful journeys and how you approached them, and then maybe what you learned from them.
I think that both of them were very distinct and taught me different things, right?
Sure.
With my brother, I was still a little younger.
How old was he when he passed away?
I can't remember. He would have been 10 years old when he passed away.
Okay.
It was about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And so walking through that, I'm 3 years older than him.
Okay.
So I would have been 13. That was about a 2-year-long kind of thing where first he was diagnosed with leukemia.
Okay.
And walked through that for about a year. And that was essentially going into remission. And then he got diagnosed with another very rare form of cancer and had to go through a bone marrow transplant before eventually passing away about a year later. So that was it was very difficult, right? Because our family was very close.
Sure.
And it involved always having one parent at the hospital pretty much.
Right.
So I remember a lot of different hospital visits, and I really appreciated the way that my family approached it because of that togetherness. My parents had a big focus on, let's go to the hospital. Let's be with him. I remember we slept over there some nights, like, one sibling or other would sleep over there, which even opened up the opportunity for the hospital staff to see that there's something different there. Right. And the family is approaching it in a different way.
There's a love and respect for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it was very difficult in that it felt like it fragmented things in our family, but it also brought us together in different ways. And so that was kind of what Caleb's journey was like. And it was my first experience, right, with cancer and the passing of a loved one.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I know that growing up, I would always hear this word cancer, and it was like this strange thing that didn't actually exist.
That happens to other people.
Yeah. That happens to other people, but like it's not going to happen to us, right? And so to have that become a reality then, and to witness the way that my parents approached it.
How did they approach it?
Was key. They, like I said, they approached it with a focus on family and then with the focus on honesty.
Yeah.
I think that is super important. That idea of, look, this is a hard thing. This is a very big thing, even for a child, right?
Yeah.
But this is life, and we should talk about these things, and we should be open and honest about these things, and we should be aware of how God will step in, and that we have hope and that we have assurance of something greater, right?
How big is your family? How many siblings were there?
Mm-hmm. There were 4 siblings.
Four siblings,
yeah.
So you dealt with Caleb's struggles with leukemia as a family, and after his passing, how did you approach the Lord? Were you angry with him? Did you accept it? How did you walk through his passing from a spiritual perspective?
I wrestled with him, like I still remember nights where I would stay up and I would wrestle with these things and be like, Lord, why? Why is this happening? And so there was that asking a question of the Lord.
Yeah.
But throughout, there was always his presence. And I still remember the day that he passed away, and this happened on the day that my mom passed away as well, were 2 of the days that I felt, I tell people, I felt closest to heaven. It was like heaven came down into that hospital room.
Yeah.
And, we worshiped, we read scripture, we had our pastor come in and just pray. And it was something that was so, I think, characteristic of the kingdom of God, because this thing that was meant to be dark, that was meant to be difficult, was turned into this thing of almost joyfulness, right? Yeah. It's still hard. And that's the tension of the Christian life.
It is.
We carry both of those things.
Right.
But there's beauty there. There's this closeness that, because God has promised that he will be close in times of suffering, in times of trial. And if you walk with him, if you make faithful decisions, then he will be there the way he was in that room.
Yeah. What it sounds to me is like you and your family experienced the peace that passes all human understanding, because that's the only way to understand the joy that you were experiencing, because death is painful. It's not part of life. It's become life because of the fall.
Yeah.
So your brother Caleb passes away when you're 13. Your mom, you mentioned, passed away later. How old were you when your mom passed away?
It would have been 2 years ago now. I would have been about 17.
So roughly 4 years difference between Caleb's passing and your mom's. Is that right?
Let me correct that. I probably would have been 16, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, about 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
How was that? Because you're probably still dealing with your brother's passing, and it had to be even more difficult to lose not only your mom, your teacher, your friend, someone who really shaped your life and really infused her life into yours.
Yeah. It was hard, and it was hard in a lot of aspects, right? Even just the way that it came about. We were actually at my brother's graveside, just like visiting the cemetery, when we got the call that confirmed her diagnosis.
Was this the same rare cancer that your brother had?
No, this was a form of breast cancer.
Okay.
But we're sitting there, and she had gotten a test and gotten checked out a few weeks or a month earlier. And we get this call, and it confirms this diagnosis. And this moment that we're already kind of in grief, remembering Caleb and stuff. And then to have that was very difficult. It was crushing, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I've described it when talking about it before in writing and stuff as kind of this rock, right? That feels like with Caleb, it started rolling downhill, and you keep trying different things, you keep pursuing different treatments, keep doing more research, and the rock just keeps rolling. And
it goes faster.
And it goes faster, right? And so it's very difficult to feel like that rock was starting to roll again. And even throughout, right, it just kept rolling, so to speak. And it just felt like, okay, this is just the same thing over again. And I think I had grown a lot in my faith and my strength, right, in the Lord from Caleb, that then helped carry over into the experience with my mom. But nonetheless, I still had a hard time sitting with it. So I sought distraction in some other things. And as we walked through that, it was a deeper understanding. It led to a deeper understanding of what suffering is and what suffering looks like in the Christian life, and how we sit with the hard things in life. And I'm grateful for that, because I think that's enabled me to connect with people and to empathize with people in a way that I wouldn't have been able to before.
Right.
But it's nonetheless hard. I, again, am just grateful for the way that my parents approached it. My mom, nearing towards the end, she was very open about kind of her desires and what she wanted for after, if she were to pass away. And that even included like telling my dad, hey, like the kids need a mom. And so, like you have my blessing to remarry, right? And stuff like that. And so that's something that I see that she did in her wisdom and in her strength. Because that's a very difficult thing to do. But it was a huge gift that she left for us, was the not having to wonder, right? After she passed away in a time of so much uncertainty, just being like, okay, this is what she wanted.
Yeah.
And so here's what we're going to do.
Another gift she gave you, and anyone who's heard her story, is she sat down via the computer and to talk with a student writer from Cedarville's Public Relations Department to do a story about her. And she was in the process of completing a master's degree in nursing at Cedarville.
Yeah.
And she passed before that graduation day. Your sister was on campus to receive the hood for your mom. Speak to that blessing of, and even the strength of your mom, for her to share her story at such a pivotal time in her life.
I mean, I shared at our Shark Tank, the pitch competition, right? I shared a little bit about this, but she was doing her master's and homeschooling the kids while going through treatment, which to me is just like, I really see her strength there. That's kind of mind blowing. But she, after my brother going through what he had went through, she had this heart and this interest in childhood cancer. And so that led her to get involved with some research projects down in Brazil. And actually, she had developed some close relationships with some of the doctors. And so helped further those research projects, which led her to desire further education. And so she sought to do her master's in nursing online here at Cedarville.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was just a really cool opportunity for her to have something to pursue and have something to aim after, right? And accomplish. And the only thing I have to say is that she was incredibly strong in all of that. And
she was incredibly strong all the way to the end, as I could tell. And she, in talking with my student writer, she was very open, very engaging, even though she was struggling with her own diagnosis. So that was a blessing for us to be able to share her story. And I know when your sister received her hood, that was a very moving tribute to your mom. I'm glad that could happen. So through all this, you have developed I'll call a theology of suffering. What does that look like, and how has that shaped your approach to life as a young college student?
Yeah. I think that suffering strips away everything that is unnecessary. And the Bible talks about that. It says that, suffering is like a furnace that refines, refines your character, refines your desires. Yeah. And I think that the way that I've seen that is coming to an understanding of what really matters. And ultimately, it's God, right? Yeah. It's faith, following Him, being faithful, and people. It's relationships, And so there's this concept that I heard that is, while we're here on earth, we have the opportunity to witness in a way that we never will in eternity. And, it's a very special opportunity, actually, because if you look at eternity and you look at our time here on earth, our time on earth is like a little dot on that entire timeline. Right. So while we're here in the middle of suffering that won't exist in heaven, we have the opportunity to be faithful, to declare that God is still good. And that's a unique opportunity to earth. Yeah. And we also have the opportunity to sit with other people and encourage other people as they're in the middle of their own sufferings and in the middle of their own things they're going to. So that has just come to shape my approach to life, right? Yeah. I think it helps even just eliminate some of the superficial things that we can get caught up on. So, oh, I wore something stupid, or, oh, I'm going to do something that's going to make me look silly.
Right.
It's like, that really doesn't matter.
Doesn't at all.
It really doesn't matter. And so it puts into perspective, hey, it's worth trying to do something in life. It's worth going after things. It's worth seeking to have an impact, even if you look silly, because relationships and the people that you speak to is what's really going to stay behind and what's really going to bear witness to your life.
Your words and your life are so inspiring for a young guy. I'm thankful because I haven't experienced anything that you've experienced. I've never lost a sibling, and my parents are in their early to mid 90s right now. I still have them living in Michigan. My day is coming, or their day is coming, you know. So I thank you for sharing your heart, speaking into what we all will experience someday, unless the Lord comes back before we die. So thank you for sharing that. So we're about out of time. So I'm going to maybe just leave you with a question or two. I want to go back to your Chile experience. What did that opportunity teach you, or what did you learn from your mission trip to Chile?
It's a great question. I think, like I said earlier, it was a reminder of why of business. Why should a Christian, seek success, and what are you able to do with that? And the answer to that is people have an impact. Relationships, the little moments that I talked about.
Right.
And so that just regrounded me and got me on the track of, I want that to be my first priority. So, and I think that there's also a bigger hunger for community. We hosted a couple different events, and we got to meet a bunch of different people. And the way that people light up when they see, I think especially in the entrepreneurship world, because that can be a kind of isolating path, the way that people light up when they see, oh, you're interested in this as well, you have a passion for this as well, is really encouraging to me and really makes me say, hey, let's do more of this. Let's get more people together. Let's connect Christians that have the resources to send, and let's make things happen.
Okay. You may have just answered my final question, but we'll see. So when you think about the legacy that you want to leave behind, what matters most to you?
People. And having that impact, right? Discipleship and seeking to, I've been blessed in so many ways by different people, and so seeking to pass that on and seeking to encourage. And there's this idea that we talked about sometimes going through the journey with Caleb and my mom of walking towards heaven, arms linked with each other. And I think that's such a beautiful image of what the church should be. Is walking side by side, encouraging, sitting with each other, supporting each other, and doing all of that headed in the direction of heaven. So
great advice, great legacy, and great conversation today, Josh. I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit. I know I'll have you on the podcast later in the year with when I bring Will in. We talk about the Hustle House where you live and where the entrepreneurs of Cedarville reside. Looking forward to that. But thank you for being transparent and honest and open with your life and on this Cedarville Stories podcast. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cedarville Stories podcast, brought to you by Cedarville University. To learn more about Cedarville University, visit our website at cedarville.edu. And be sure to come back next week when we'll share another Cedarville story for God's glory.